They said it was a wedding fit for royalty, golden camels, diamond tiaras, and fireworks blooming over the Dubai sky. But the guest list had no room for the sister who once planned every celebration of their lives. That sister was me. I wasn't even sent a save the date. While they toasted without me, I booked a one-way flight to the Aegean coast where silence didn't mean shame. But when a TikTok clip from the wedding caught a slap, a betrayal, and my name trending, they suddenly remembered who I was. And it was too late to rewrite the aisle. The photo appeared on my feed while I was eating reheated lentil soup at my kitchen counter, still in my office clothes, hair twisted into a half-hearted bun face creased from a long day. At first, I assumed it was an ad. The kind that litters your screen with golden sparkles and cursive fonts over palm trees and soft desert haze. But then I saw the name. Bella Whitman. My sister. I blinked once. Then again. It was a wedding invitation, square-cut embossed in gold foil laid delicately atop a bed of cream roses. There was a translucent ribbon tied in a neat bow across the corner. The caption below the post read, "Can't wait for the Dubai magic," followed by champagne and camel emojis. The post came from Elise Monroe, someone we went to high school with. We hadn't spoken in years unless you count liking each other's dog photos on birthdays. I stared at the image, waiting for anything to make sense. The date was printed in ornate cursive, the 22nd of March. Less than a month away. Below it in elegant type were the names Bella Whitman and Thomas Green. I refreshed the post 3 times. My name wasn't in the caption. Not in the comments, not tagged anywhere. I scrolled through Elise's profile. There were more shots, luggage tags with gold calligraphy, a mood board of tan linens and white orchids, a close-up of a custom perfume bottle engraved with Bella and Thomas. There was no mistaking it. My baby sister was getting married in Dubai. And I hadn't even known she was engaged. I opened our family group chat, the one titled Whitman's Plus Thanksgiving 2017, because no one had ever bothered to rename it. The last message was from our dad 3 weeks ago, sending a blurry photo of his new grill. No mention of any wedding. I sat back, heart pounding. My ears rang. My face flushed hot, then cold. I called my mom. She picked up on the 4th ring, her voice cheery like I'd just caught her between yoga and boiling pasta. "Hey, sweetheart, everything okay? Is Bella getting married in Dubai?" I asked. There was a pause. The kind that stretches just long enough to confirm what you already suspect. Then the sound of a spoon clinking gently against porcelain. "Oh, that," she said like I'd asked if she'd remembered to water the plants. "Yes, she is." "Isn't it exciting?" I waited. Nothing more came. "I haven't received anything," I said. "Am I not invited?" Another pause, longer this time, a shift in her breathing. "Sweetheart, don't take it the wrong way. It's not personal. Bella just..." She wanted something small. Very curated. Close friends, inner circle. You know how she is. Inner circle. I could feel the words sticking in my throat. 40 people have already posted about it. That's not small. She sighed. "Leah, don't make this a thing. It's just one day. Let her have it. Just one day." Those 3 words landed like gravel in my chest. I knew that tone. I'd been raised on it. Soft dismissal dressed up as maternal calm. The kind that says, "Stop making this about you," without saying it out loud. I didn't argue. What was the point? I hung up, set my phone down carefully, and stared at the fridge door, blank and humming. The lentil soup had gone cold. My spoon was still in my hand, but the weight of it felt absurd. Heavy, ridiculous. That night, I lay in bed, wide-eyed, blankets tangled around my legs, and let memories slip in uninvited. I remembered Bella's 5th birthday party with the pony in the backyard. The pink canopy bed she got at 12. The semester abroad in Florence, complete with designer luggage and a blog called Bellissima Bella. I remembered asking to attend a summer design program at SAIC in Chicago and being told gently but firmly that college was expensive enough. That we should focus on what's practical. So, I worked. I stocked shelves at a fabric store and saved up for gas money. Bella posted cappuccinos and cobblestones from Italy. Over the years, I became the dependable one. The one who remembered anniversaries, booked restaurants for our parents' birthdays, bought thoughtful gifts, arranged flowers, and smiled when Bella showed up 45 minutes late in a designer jumpsuit. I was the background, the scaffolding, the person who got things done without asking for applause. And now my sister was getting married in a foreign country surrounded by orchids and diamonds and whatever imported spectacle she dreamed up without even sending me a text. I wasn't angry. I wasn't jealous of Dubai or the Camels or even the dress fittings I'd undoubtedly missed. What I felt was smaller, tighter. The kind of ache that wraps around your ribs and stays there breathing with you. It wasn't the extravagance that hurt, it was being erased. I didn't call Bella. I didn't send a sarcastic message or post something vague online. Instead, I did what I've always done. I opened my laptop, went to a bookmarked site I hadn't used in years, and booked a one-way flight to Santorini. I chose a white villa built into the cliffs overlooking the Aegean. There was a plunge pool, a breakfast terrace, and an email confirmation that read, "Thank you, Miss Whitman, we look forward to welcoming you." I told no one. Not Jade, my best friend since freshman year. Not Monica, my assistant. Not even the group chat from design school. I packed light. A few dresses, 2 paperbacks, 1 pair of heels I probably wouldn't wear. I didn't have a plan, I wasn't making a point, I just needed to leave. Because if there was no room for me in my sister's perfect wedding, then maybe it was time I stopped leaving space for people who only saw me when they needed something. And somehow, in the quiet of my apartment with my phone screen still glowing, I realized this wasn't an escape, it was an exit. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like the right one. I flew out 2 days later, leaving behind a quiet Boston apartment and a week's worth of unanswered texts from colleagues asking if I was okay. I didn't respond. Not yet. My out-of-office reply was vague. Just taking some time. Back soon. I wasn't sure when or if soon would come. The flight to Santorini was long and soft and forgettable, which is exactly what I needed. I landed in golden light, the kind that painted the Aegean like melted bronze, and climbed into a cab that wound through cliffside roads until the world felt like someone else's dream. The villa was as white as the photos, perched high and curved into stone like it had grown there. A basket of lemons waited on the terrace table. I didn't even unpack. I kicked off my shoes, let the marble cool my feet, and sat on the ledge that overlooked the sea, watching sailboats like paper silhouettes sliding across water that barely moved. I didn't cry. Not for what I'd left or for what I hadn't been invited to. What settled in me was something more dangerous than sadness. Clarity. It wasn't just the wedding, it was every time before this. The birthdays I planned. The centerpieces I arranged. The speeches I wrote for my dad's retirement dinner when Bella forgot the date. The emergency calls that pulled me from clients and contracts because Bella needed something. And I always showed up. Always. Until now. I remembered 2016 so clearly I could still feel the blisters on my hands from hauling sound equipment into a tented rooftop in Brooklyn. I had been coordinating a brand launch for a reality television star. 3 months of planning, 2 contracts signed, 1 pre-event interview left. Then my mom called. Bella had collapsed in her apartment in Soho. Something about exhaustion or dehydration, or too much Pinot Grigio and not enough food. My mother's voice cracked when she said please. She always knew where to press. I canceled the event. Took a late train. Saturday with Bella in an ER waiting room for 6 hours, holding her hand and listening to her complain about the fluorescent lights and the fact that her nails were chipped. She didn't remember it, of course. She thanked me casually 2 days later with a text that read, "You're a lifesaver, love you," accompanied by a gif of a golden retriever in sunglasses. That was how it always went. Now I wasn't just excluded. I was replaced. Out of habit or maybe masochism, I pulled up Bella's wedding planner's profile the next morning. Savannah Doyle. The name hit me like a breeze off cold water. We'd crossed paths. NYU class of 2010. She was one of those girls who always dressed like an off-duty model even at 8 a.m. lectures. Her projects were always polished, always just a little too familiar. We weren't friends, but we were in the same graduate studio once. I remembered a workshop in spring 2021. I had presented a mock luxury wedding concept for a client who ended up ghosting me. I never pitched it again, just filed it away in a hard drive I hadn't touched in months. Curiosity turned into something sharp. I opened my laptop, dug out the USB I kept taped behind the desk drawer, and pulled up the old folder. There it was. Santorini Muse, a concept built around soft sand tones, pressed orchid menus, low circular arches wrapped in pearls. The palette was named Dusk Blush, Almond Smoke, and Lavender Dusk. Even the custom monogram I designed, interlocked initials inside a gold-etched olive branch, looked eerily familiar. I toggled back to Savannah's Instagram. Her latest post showed a rendering of Bella's wedding arch in Dubai. Same shape, same palette. Same initials, only theirs. I stared at the screen until the sea outside blurred with the edge of the laptop. She hadn't even changed the font. It was petty, maybe. Or maybe not. Maybe it was another brick in the wall of things quietly taken and never returned. I scrolled through Savannah's posts. Every comment called her brilliant, original, visionary. People I'd worked with before were now fawning over her. Even a past client of mine had left 3 flame emojis. I wasn't angry in the way that boils, I was angry in the way that freezes. In the way that makes everything suddenly quiet. I closed the laptop, poured a glass of water. Saturday, back on the terrace, and watched a couple take photos down the slope, the woman spinning in a flowy skirt while her partner filmed on an iPhone. I wondered if they would remember this moment in 10 years, or if it would become one of those clips you scroll past, not knowing what it took to smile like that. Inside, my phone buzzed. A message from Jade. Hey. Saw Bella's wedding trending. Are you okay? I let the message sit. Then typed. Not really, but I'm where I need to be. She replied instantly. Call me anytime. I mean it. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I opened the photo I had saved from my original mood board. The one Savannah had mirrored. I looked at it, studied every soft line and lavender brushstroke. There was a reason I'd created it. And someone else had just used it to stage the wedding I wasn't invited to. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. You inspired me more than you'll ever know. No name. No context. But I had a guess. I turned the phone over and left it face down on the table. Then I walked barefoot down the stone path to the water, letting the wind gather in my hair like old stories, finally trying to leave. The water was colder than I expected, and it startled me in a way that felt honest. I let it wash over my ankles, then up to my calves as I stepped further into the tide, my white cotton dress clinging softly to my legs. The salt stung a little, but I welcomed it. It made me feel real again. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat outside with a blanket over my shoulders, sipping a glass of wine that had gone warm, watching the stars blink in and out of focus. My phone sat face down on the table, silent, just the way I wanted it. In the morning, I ignored every instinct to check emails or texts or headlines. I made coffee in the little stone kitchen, pulled on linen pants and a tank top, and carried my breakfast to the edge of the terrace. The sun had barely cleared the waterline, and the air still held that early hush that only lives between 6 and 7 a.m. I let it wrap around me like a secret. By noon, I had read 2 chapters of a book I had already forgotten the plot of, then drifted into a nap with the windows open and a breeze teasing the curtains. The only noise was the occasional buzz of a moped somewhere down in the village and the distant bell of a church that rang without urgency. On the second afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror, brushed the salt out of my hair, and slipped into a simple white slip dress. It wasn't planned. I just wanted to feel clean, untouched. I poured another glass of wine, stepped barefoot onto the terrace, and held the camera up for a photo. One frame. No filters, no smile. Just me, the sea behind me, and the sky painted in lavender and gold. I didn't write anything dramatic, just 3 words. Silence is golden. I posted it without thinking, set my phone down, and walked away. 3 hours later, I saw the voicemail. Hey honey, it's Mom. Just wanted to check in. I saw your photo. You look beautiful. And well, I know things are tense, but I hope you know you'll always be family. Sisterhood is forever, right? Anyway, call when you can. Love you. It wasn't an apology, it never was. It was a carefully folded napkin of concern laid gently over a plate that had already shattered. I stared at the waveform of her voice, the way it pulsed on the screen, then deleted it. A few minutes later, a notification popped up, a comment on my post. From Rachel Lynn. Beautiful Leah, wishing you peace. Rachel was Bella's friend. One of the bridesmaids, if I remembered correctly. She was always the one carrying extra pins in her purse and offering to take group photos with the best angles. We hadn't spoken in years. I hovered over the comment, thumb suspended. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Instagram again, this time out of reflex more than anything. I typed in Savannah Doyle's profile. Her feed was buzzing. The last few posts were photos of her and Bella tagged from locations around Dubai. Gold leaf tasting menus. Monogrammed parasols. Orchids draped from crystal chandeliers. I clicked on one photo, then another. And then I froze. The reception layout, the arch, the lighting. Even the color palette, it was mine. Not inspired by, not similar to. It was my 2021 design from that mock proposal I had created and stored away. I recognized the blush table runners with their faint shimmer. The overhead lighting shaped like intertwined branches. The seating chart with translucent columns and names handwritten in silver ink. I dug through my cloud drive, retrieved the folder, and pulled up my original file. There it was. I placed her post and my document side by side. Same fonts, same structure. Even the flow of the menu matched. She hadn't just copied me, she had lifted it wholesale. I sat back in the chair, letting the disbelief run its course. Savannah had used my work. My concept. And now she was being hailed as visionary by accounts with thousands of followers. My sister's wedding had become the crown jewel in Savannah's growing portfolio, all built on something I'd created and buried. A comment under her latest post read, "Best wedding I've ever seen. You're a genius." I closed my laptop gently, like setting down something that might break if I touched it wrong. I wasn't sure what to do. A part of me wanted to message her to demand credit, to call her out. But another part of me, the deeper, older part, didn't want to explain my worth to anyone. She knew what she did. And I knew where it came from. That would have to be enough. For now. The sky outside had turned a deeper blue and the wind had picked up slightly. I walked out to the terrace again, wine forgotten, and leaned against the stone railing. Far below, someone lit a fire near the beach. The flicker of it caught the curve of the water just right. I stood there until the sun vanished and the first stars found their place. Then I turned off my phone, locked the patio door behind me, and let the night hold me in its quiet arms. The morning sun slipped through the shutters, painting soft gold stripes across the marble floor. I stretched under the linen sheets, breathing in the faint salt of the sea air. It was quiet, still. For a moment I let myself believe the silence would last. Then my phone lit up. Not one alert, dozens. Missed calls, messages, notifications, all tumbling in like a wave I didn't know how to stop. I ignored them at first. Let the screen blink itself tired. But then one name stood out, Jade. I opened the text. She had sent a link with no explanation. Just a single word, watch. The thumbnail showed fireworks exploding behind an arch of white roses. I hesitated, thumb hovering, then tapped it. The clip opened with a sweeping drone shot over a sprawling resort. Gold domes shimmered under floodlights. A string quartet played in the background, their sound barely audible over the applause as the camera zoomed toward a ballroom balcony. Guests in glittering gowns clapped, raised champagne flutes, some throwing rose petals in slow motion. Then, just as the drone panned slightly left, the music cut out. What came next wasn't part of any wedding highlight reel. It started faint but clear enough. A voice, breathless and angry. "You think I wouldn't find out?" There was a gasp. Then another voice, low, unmistakably male. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. A slap rang out, sharp and sudden. Gasps. Someone near the camera whispered, "Holy hell, that's Bella's bestie Savannah." Then Bella's voice, raw and broken, cut through it all. "You slept with her the week we did food tasting." And then silence. A moment of stunned, breathless silence. The video ended at 28 seconds. I sat frozen heart knocking hard against my ribs. The wine glass in my hand tilted. I didn't even feel it slip until it hit the tile, shattering into pale shards. Red soaked into the hem of my dress and I didn't move. Couldn't. I hit replay. The slap, the whisper. Bella's voice cracking open like glass under pressure. You slept with her. My fingers shook. I scrolled down. The account that posted it was some wedding behind-the-scenes TikTok page. They hadn't even tagged Bella. The caption read, "Caught by Flycam, trouble in wedding paradise." The comment section was already on fire. Wait. Isn't that Thomas Ridgway? That's the Ritz Dubai Grand. I was there, Savannah Doyle. The stylist. I checked the timestamp. The video had been uploaded only 2 hours ago. I opened Twitter. 10 accounts had already reposted it, some with filters, others slowed down the audio, added subtitles. One even zoomed in on Savannah's face, then cut to a screenshot of her business profile, founder of Opal Events NYC. I scrolled horrified and mesmerized as the views ticked higher. 70,000. Then 84. Some user named @TruthUnfolding wrote, "Not Savannah sleeping with the groom. Girl, what happened to loyalty?" Another said, "Bella Whitman deserves better." You could see the betrayal hit her in real time. And there it was. Bella's full name trending. I covered my mouth with one hand. My heart ached, not with satisfaction or vindication, but something colder. Something heavier. This wasn't how I wanted to be proven right. I had imagined Bella standing in her dress, surrounded by fireworks, basking in the glory she so desperately curated. I hadn't imagined her finding out on her wedding night that her husband had betrayed her with her own stylist. Her friend. And yet, somewhere deep inside, past the shock and pity, something else stirred. Not revenge. Relief. I opened Instagram and saw the flood. Guests had posted photos all night. Camels adorned in silk blankets. A 5-tier cake with gold leaf and sugar orchids. The bride in custom elisab descending a staircase of rose petals. Men in tuxedos smoking cigars under lanterns imported from Morocco. Performers in feathered headdresses dancing beside a pool that glittered with floating candles. But none of them had captions that said anything about the fight. Not yet, only silence under gold. Then, at the edge of a video clip showing the end of the fireworks, I noticed it. Just for a second. In the corner. Thomas storming off. Savannah trailing behind him, heels in her hand. Bella standing still, arms stiff at her sides. The illusion had cracked. I stared at the screen for a long time, then finally shut it off. In the silence that followed, I picked up the pieces of the glass one by one and dropped them in the sink. My fingers were trembling. I didn't know what came next. Not for them, not for me. But I knew the show was over, the curtain had fallen. And for once I wasn't in the audience. I was far, far away. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel left out. I felt spared. By morning it was everywhere. Luxury wedding melts down in Dubai flashed across the home screen of my news app, followed by stylist slaps groom, bride screams betrayal in viral clip, and influencer Bella Whitman's fairy tale ends in fireworks. I didn't even have to open the articles. The headlines told me enough. I made coffee without checking my phone again. Poured it slowly, like if I moved gently the world would stop spinning. Outside the villa, the Aegean sparkled with that impossible blue. Santorini stayed beautiful. Oblivious. Like the sea didn't care that someone's perfect life had just burst into glitter and smoke. But by midday, I caved. I tapped into the trending tag number Dubai wedding disaster. The video had evolved. What started as one shaky clip had now turned into a full cinematic montage. Multiple angles. Guests had shared different views of the fight. Someone had subtitled it in Spanish. A wedding planner on TikTok stitched it with her reaction. Another guest, apparently seated behind the bridesmaids, posted a reel with a caption that read, "That's what happens when you book love like a luxury venue." I kept scrolling. Savannah had deleted her Instagram entirely. Her styling agency's page was now private. Comments from angry brides to be demanding refunds still flooded the tagged photos. Bella hadn't deleted anything, but every photo was locked down. She had turned off comments, removed tags, and stopped posting, but the internet didn't care about privacy settings. Not anymore. An article from Buzzline News had a side-by-side of Bella and Savannah during their bachelorette trip to Positano, arms around each other, glowing in matching swimsuits. The headline underneath read, "From best friends to betrayal inside the wedding that imploded mid-vows." And then nestled near the end of the article, a sentence froze me in place. Sources close to the family reveal that the bride's older sister was notably absent. No explanation has been offered, though some speculate a long-standing rift. My breath caught. I stared at the words again. Notably absent. The phone rang. Dad. I watched it ring once. Twice. The third time I picked up. His voice was lower than usual. Not angry. Not warm either. Leah, come home. I didn't say anything. The press is calling, he continued. They want to know why the sister isn't in any of the pictures. They want quotes. Still, I said nothing. Leah, he tried again, softer now. You've made your point. I hung up. A minute later, he sent a follow-up text. You're making it worse by staying quiet. I tossed the phone on the bed and walked to the patio. The wind had picked up. Waves slapped the rocks with more force than yesterday. My coffee had gone cold. I walked back and tried to distract myself. Opened the fridge, closed it, scanned through old photos on my iPad. It was no use. The second ring came just before sunset. Not Dad this time. Jade. I answered on the second ring. You've seen it, she asked. No hello, no hesitation. Yes, it's blowing up. Twitter. TikTok. Even Daily Mail picked it up. I know. Her voice dropped. But that's not the craziest part. I waited. The original poster, the one who uploaded the first drone clip. It was Oliver. Everything in me went still. Number. Yes. I checked 3 times. His handle's different now, but it links to his freelancer profile. He was there. With Rachel. I leaned against the edge of the bed, knees weakening. Of course he was. Oliver. The man who once said I was too safe. Too predictable. That I lacked ambition because I didn't want to follow him to war zones and protests. The man who called my stability a cage. Now he was filming viral scandals and cashing in on pain. And Rachel. Bella's friend. The one who had commented on my Santorini post like nothing was wrong. She was in the shot too, laughing. Holding a champagne glass as fireworks exploded in the background. It all clicked. He had used me. The DM he sent 2 weeks ago casually asking where I was spending the summer. I hadn't answered. But Rachel followed me. She'd seen the villa photos. She'd known I wasn't at the wedding, so had he. And now he was leveraging that absence for narrative. An exclusive angle. A missing sister. The quiet scandal behind the loud one. I ended the call with Jade typed one message and sent it. There are fireworks no one invites, but they explode anyway. Then I powered off my phone again. I didn't need to see what came next. I wasn't going to be a footnote in someone else's drama. I wasn't going to be the mystery sister for tabloids to dissect. I stepped onto the balcony, pulled the shawl tighter around my shoulders, and watched the night bloom with stars. Quiet. Undisturbed. And this time I stayed there. Let the chaos unfold without me. Let the noise eat itself. They had turned their spotlight elsewhere. But shadows always remember where the light used to be. The morning light in Santorini had that pearly shimmer again, like the world was trying too hard to look innocent. I sat on the edge of the whitewashed balcony, coffee growing cold in my hand, staring out at the Aegean Sea that refused to care about anything but being blue. My phone buzzed beside me. I didn't move. It had been buzzing all night. Eventually, I looked. 3 missed calls from Mom. 2 from Dad. 1 text blinking unread. Bella isn't eating. She's barely speaking. Only you can calm her. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I opened a different app. Google Maps. I typed in the address I'd memorized before I ever learned multiplication. The house on Las Palmas Drive in Santa Barbara. Grandma Eleanor's house. It used to be the only place that felt like mine. Even more than the Manhattan apartment I bought myself at 28. I dragged the little yellow figure onto the street. The image loaded slowly pixel by pixel until the house appeared. Except it wasn't a house anymore. The red-tiled roof was still there, so were the roses along the driveway. But the sign out front said Marlowe and Company Interiors. The front porch had been replaced with double glass doors and the blue shutters were now some shade of expensive charcoal. Cold. Commercial. I zoomed in. Through the glass I could see a chandelier I didn't recognize. Mid-century chairs on display. Abstract paintings in pastels. They had turned my grandmother's house into a luxury furniture showroom. And they hadn't told me. Not in 2019 when Grandma passed and left everything to Dad for the family. Not when he promised Bella would just rent it for a while finishing her interior design program. Not when I asked if we should keep the place as a family home. And certainly not when they sold it off and used the money. I had found out only 2 days ago during a phone call I hadn't even meant to answer. Dad had called. The second I picked up, he didn't even ask how I was. He just said in a low, exhausted voice, "We had to. For the wedding. For the wedding." The one with camels, diamonds, imported caviar, and fireworks over Dubai. That wedding. I remember holding the phone and blinking like he had spoken in another language. "You sold Grandma's house to pay for Bella's wedding." His silence told me more than any apology could. Then, like some panicked attempt to rewrite the past, he added, "We thought you'd understand. It was important for Bella. For her reputation." I had hung up before I could say something I wouldn't regret. Now 2 days later, I stared at the screen showing my childhood sanctuary as a place that sold velvet ottomans and curated rugs. The doorbell rang in my villa. I didn't move. A moment later my inbox pinged. An email, subject line urgent, family statement request. It was from a lawyer. Not mine. One retained by my parents for family matters. The message read, "We strongly recommend you release a brief statement regarding the recent social media circulation of wedding footage. A show of unity will protect the family's public image. Your silence is being interpreted as passive endorsement of rumors." I stared at the screen. Reread it, then read it again. A show of unity. Not an apology. Not a thank you for everything I did for this family. Just an expectation that I would fix their mess. Again. My chest tightened. Not from sadness, not even from anger. From the absurdity. They excluded me from the wedding. They took what was meant for me and turned it into fireworks for Bella. They let someone else steal my ideas, my mood boards, my reputation. And now when the glitter settled into dust, they needed me to clean it up. I opened my phone and scrolled to another message. This one from Aunt Carol. Sent just after the news broke. "Don't come back yet, Leah. Let them sit in it. Let them learn what absence tastes like." That was the thing about Aunt Carol. She never said much. But when she did, it landed. I pressed my hand against my chest, not for drama, but because something inside felt like it had shifted. Like a book quietly closing. I wasn't going back. Not to smooth things over. Not to be the grown-up. Not to make Bella eat. They had sold off more than real estate. They had sold off my place in the family. And the return policy had expired the day they erased me from the biggest moment of Bella's life. I walked to the kitchenette and poured myself another cup of coffee. This one I intended to drink. Outside, the breeze danced across the patio like it hadn't read the headlines. Like it didn't know that across the world journalists were dissecting 28 seconds of scandal trying to decide who the real villain was. I didn't care. Let them try to guess. Let them wonder why the sister wasn't in any photos. Let them try to contact me. I wasn't hiding, but I wasn't saving them either. And when the wind swept through again warm and steady, I smiled to myself and thought I have nothing left to lose, and that makes me very dangerous. They called it a wedding of the decade. But behind every picture-perfect angle, every floral arch, and every sparkle on the champagne glass, there was a question that refused to go away. It started small, almost like a whisper. A few curious comments under Bella's Instagram photos. A thread on Reddit with a clickbait title, "The Mysterious Absence of the Bride's Sister in a $2.8 million rupees Dubai Wedding." Then someone uploaded a zoomed-in clip from the rehearsal dinner footage clearly showing a seat with my name card crossed out with black ink. That clip went viral. Hashtag #WhereIsLeah started trending by noon the next day. At first I ignored it. I didn't want to feed it. But curiosity is a tricky thing. It slips into your silence. I opened TikTok and found myself spiraling through strangers dissecting my life like an episode of a drama series. One girl was lip-syncing to my mother's voicemail acting like it was from her own mom. Another stitched clips of Bella crying in a car mashed with paparazzi photos from the wedding and screenshots of my now private Instagram post. Silence is golden. Then came the YouTubers. One of them, a woman named Cassidy Sloan, who specialized in celebrity gossip and family fallouts, released a 30-minute video titled "The Sister Who Was Erased," a deep dive into Leah Whitman's disappearance. She had no real facts, just speculation, but the comments exploded. One viewer claimed to be a hotel staffer in Dubai and said they overheard a fight involving the groom and an uninvited American woman with a calm voice and dangerous smile. That wasn't me. I wasn't even on the same continent. But the myth of me had already grown teeth. It felt absurd, surreal, even to watch a version of myself go viral. To be turned into a symbol, a headline, a narrative arc. And yet, as strange as it sounds, I didn't feel invaded. I felt seen. For the first time, people were asking questions I had buried for years. Where was Leah? Why wasn't she at the wedding? Why didn't Bella or her parents acknowledge her? Jade was the only one who asked if I was okay. She called me late at night, her voice low and warm through the receiver. I could hear her rustling under a blanket like we were teenagers again, sharing gossip past midnight. "You good?" she asked. I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "They're calling me the uninvited healer," I said. Jade paused. That actually kind of fits. Apparently someone on Twitter had coined it after my photo with the wine glass and white dress got reposted by a famous stylist named Vivienne Lux. Her caption was short but thunderous. "You deserve your own aisle." That was it. 4 words. But they split the internet in two. Suddenly fashion blogs were speculating about my style, saying it was understated elegance. Some fans of Vivienne started drawing parallels between me and Meghan Markle. Others compared me to Emily Dickinson, a woman invisible in her time, yet whose silence held entire galaxies. I didn't reply to any of it, but I read every word. There was something dangerously soothing about being erased and then rewritten by strangers. They didn't know me, so they filled in the blanks with poetry and fire. They didn't see the rawness, the years of biting my tongue at family dinners, the nights I drove in circles just to cry alone. They saw a woman who walked away with grace. Who chose herself. Jade texted again later that week. "You remember that podcast we talked about starting?" she wrote. "The one about family systems, trauma healing?" I sent a thumbs up. She replied instantly. "I'm recording the first one tomorrow. Want to be my anonymous guest?" I hesitated. I hadn't spoken publicly about my family in ever. I wasn't sure I even had the vocabulary to articulate what it felt like to be slowly ghosted by people who once kissed your forehead goodnight. But I was tired of swallowing the story whole. Maybe it was time to let it out in fragments. "Okay," I typed back. No names. Just feelings. We recorded that night. Jade introduced me as Elle. The episode was titled "The Invisible Daughter." I spoke slowly, careful not to shatter. I told her about being the backup plan for family logistics. The one who was always asked to drive grandma to appointments but never invited to sit at the head table. I told her about the time Bella broke her ankle before a school play and I had to step in last minute, and how our parents still congratulated her for being the star. It wasn't a rant, it was a release. When we finished, there was silence between us. Jade whispered, "I'm sorry. You deserved so much better." I didn't cry. I had cried enough in secret. Instead, I sat on the floor of my Santorini villa staring at the flickering candle on the windowsill, watching how the flame danced without asking anyone for permission. The podcast aired 2 days later. It reached over 100,000 plays in less than 24 hours. Listeners began sharing their own stories. A woman from Wisconsin wrote, "I haven't spoken to my sister in 15 years. This made me want to write her." A teacher in Seattle commented, "I never realized how much I erased my own daughter by praising her brother. Thank you. I wasn't trying to start a movement, but sometimes movements start in silence. In the unspoken ache that finds language at last." That night, I opened my email to find a message from Vivienne Lux's assistant. She wanted to send me a custom dress from her next collection. She called it the vanishing point. I laughed alone in the dark. Maybe I was vanishing. Or maybe, just maybe, I was finally becoming visible in my own life. A notification blinked on my screen. Twitter alert. She didn't crash the wedding, she redefined it. And beneath that, a photo of me in Santorini, arms outstretched, the sea behind me endless and wild. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow I thought I'll swim. Not to escape but to remember. I'm still here. Still whole. Even after all the pieces they tried to carve away. And maybe, especially because of that, I didn't rush to check my phone the next morning. The sun spilled across the floor like nothing had changed, like the world hadn't twisted just slightly off its axis overnight. But when I finally opened my notifications, reality came flooding back in ugly waves. There were 4 voicemails. I played them in order, sitting on the edge of my bed like a student awaiting grades she already knew were bad. The first was from my mother. Her voice came through in sobs, cracking with a desperation that would have broken me 5 years ago. Now it just sounded familiar. Predictable. "Leah, please just call us back. I don't know what happened to Bella. She hasn't eaten since the clip. She won't speak to anyone. I told her you'd know what to do. Please. Just tell me what to say to her." Click. The second was my father. Measured. Cold, efficient. "You need to stop this. The family's under scrutiny. Reporters have been contacting my office. We were not prepared for this level of exposure. I expect you to handle yourself like an adult and not escalate things further." Click. The third voicemail was Bella. Her voice barely more than a whisper. "Leah. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. I thought I could fix it before the ceremony. I thought if I smiled enough it would all go away. I'm sorry you weren't there. I just wanted one day that was mine." Click. I paused before the fourth. There was no name on the transcription. Just a voicemail from a blocked number. I tapped it with a strange chill crawling up my back. Static. Then silence. Then a breath. One shaky inhale, one shuddering exhale. Then it ended. I deleted all 4. Not because I was angry, but because none of them had said the only thing that mattered. Not a single one of them had said, "I'm sorry." Jade arrived that evening. She didn't knock. She just texted, "Open up, I brought wine," and passive aggression. We sat on my patio under string lights I had hung last summer and never taken down. She poured 2 glasses without asking, like always. I told her about the voicemails. She didn't flinch. "They're panicking," she said. "Not because they miss you. Because they lost their anchor. You've been the quiet center holding all their chaos together." I laughed, sharp and bitter. I was the glue in Bella's shoes. The invisible patch on her gown. I sewed up her messes so often she stopped noticing they existed. I didn't just hold them together. I held them up. And when I stopped, they wobbled. Jade tilted her head. "You're not wobbling, though. You're standing still. That's power they never expected you to have." We clinked glasses. Later that night, I opened my inbox to find a new message from my parents' attorney. A professionally worded request that I issue a short public statement. Something soft, non-accusatory. Something that would, and I quote, "protect the family brand." I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through my social media. It felt like walking through a museum where every exhibit was built from a version of me someone else had imagined. Pictures of Bella's wedding were still up, captioned with broken hearts and sun emojis. Extended cousins were posting throwbacks to the most beautiful celebration of love we've ever seen. Nobody tagged me. Nobody even seemed to notice my absence except to quietly avoid it. I went to my following list and unfollowed every single relative. One by one. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in a decade, even Bella. Then I changed my profile bio to one sentence. Not everyone gets a seat at the table. Some of us build a new one. I shut the app. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of breath of space, of something sharp and clean carving through old noise. The next morning, my inbox had a dozen new messages. Publicists offering to help me shape the narrative. Producers curious if I wanted to own the moment by doing a sit-down exclusive. A documentary pitch came in from a YouTuber who had gone viral narrating my story using stolen wedding clips and fan art of the forgotten sister. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I made myself eggs, opened the windows, and let the breeze carry the weight out of my lungs. I wasn't interested in building a brand on pain. I didn't want to trade one kind of performance for another. Jade texted me later that day with a screenshot from a stylist's Instagram story. It was a repost of my new bio. Caption: "You deserve your own aisle." I smiled. Not out of pride, out of recognition. Someone saw me. Finally. The voicemail from Bella played again in my mind uninvited. I just wanted one day that was mine. The irony was thick. She had an entire palace in Dubai, diamonds and fireworks, a horse-drawn carriage for the rehearsal dinner, and somehow she still believed I had taken something from her. It had never been about the day. It had always been about the room. The invisible one I carried inside me that absorbed their messes and mirrored back approval. Now that room was empty. Quiet. Locked. And for the first time I wasn't pacing inside it. I was on the outside watching the door close. Softly. Finally. Ready to walk somewhere else. The air on Naxos was lighter than I remembered. Maybe because this time I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight. I rented a small studio at the edge of the old town, just far enough from the tourist cafes to hear myself think. The landlord Giannis handed me the keys and said in broken English, "You look like someone who's been too quiet for too long." I smiled and nodded. He wasn't wrong. The place had chipped blue shutters and a lemon tree outside the window. No marble tiles, no camel-shaped gold statues. Just silence broken by birdsong and the sound of waves somewhere down the hill. I didn't decorate. I didn't bring much. Just a worn leather journal, 2 sets of clothes, and a second-hand laptop. My first morning there, I sat on the balcony and tried to order coffee in Greek. The waitress smiled, corrected my pronunciation gently, and brought me a frap with condensed milk. I didn't check my phone. I watched the way the light moved on stone. I watched how the old men leaned into each other's stories. In the afternoons, I'd write. Not a memoir. Not yet. Just pieces. Memories that had no place before. The green hairbrush Bella broke when we were 11. The time Dad told me I needed to lose 5 pounds before my cousin's wedding. The silver ring I bought for myself after getting my first bonus. No one had celebrated that moment but me. At night I watered the potted basil plant Giannis left on my windowsill. He'd said it brings luck. I didn't know if I believed that. But something about nurturing something small felt right. I hadn't posted anything on social media since the scandal broke, but the internet hadn't stopped. I didn't need to Google my name. My inbox told me enough. One day, Jade forwarded me a Reddit link. Title: $1 Million Bride with No Sister. Subheading: Everyone's obsessed with the dress. No one's asking why there's no maid of honor. The post had gone viral. Thousands of upvotes. Comments speculating whether I had died, joined a cult, or been paid to disappear. One commenter wrote, "The saddest part of that wedding isn't the camels or the diamonds. It's the missing chair beside the bride." I didn't cry. I didn't even feel much. It was like watching a movie where you know the ending. The next week, a message came through my website contact form. "Hi Leah, I'm Elena Novak, founder of Atelier Celine, a bespoke wedding design company based in Vienna. We specialize in narrative events across Europe. We saw the stories about your family. We'd like to invite you to consult on a new series called The Uninvited, curated weddings for those who were once left out of someone else's. No pressure. But your voice could change how people experience their own stories. Warmly Elena, I read it twice. Then again. I didn't know if it was a prank or a publicity stunt. But something about the wording stuck. Curated weddings for those who were once left out. I remembered the woman who wrote to me after Jade's podcast aired saying her sister had removed her from the bridal party because her wheelchair wouldn't match the aesthetic. I remembered the guy who DM'd me to say he hadn't been invited to his father's funeral because his stepmother wanted peace. Maybe people like us needed a space that wasn't an apology or a revenge plot. Just a space that said, you matter, even if no one saved you a seat. I took 2 days to reply. Hi Elena, thank you for reaching out. Your concept speaks louder than most statements I've heard from my own family. If your offer's still open, I'd be honored to help shape the uninvited. Let's create something beautiful, not in spite of absence, but because of it. Best, Leah. The next morning, she replied with a Zoom link, a calendar invite, and a list of event dates across Europe. I stared at the screen. I wasn't thinking about Bella or my parents or the headlines. I was thinking about a little girl who used to arrange birthday picnics for her dolls because no one ever came to her real ones. She would have liked this. I didn't tell Jade right away. When I did, she laughed softly and said, "Of course they'd call you. No one understands the value of a seat at the table like someone who's been standing in the hallway her whole life." We clinked glasses on my balcony that night, a half bottle of local white wine between us. "Do you think they'll hate it?" I asked. "They might," she said. "Or they might pretend it doesn't exist. But either way, they'll hear about it." The next morning, I opened a fresh document. Title: The Uninvited Manifesto. First line: you don't need to be included to be real. That was enough for now. The wind picked up through the olive trees. I poured myself another coffee. This time I said please and thank you in Greek without needing to look it up. No one had saved me. But no one could erase me either. And maybe for the first time I wasn't writing for them. I was writing for the ones who never got the speech. Never got the closure. Never got the aisle. But still walked anyway. Bella's name popped up in my inbox just after sunrise. The air still smelled like salt and jasmine. I was sitting by the open window, coffee cooling in my hand as the subject line glowed for you. I stared at it for a long while. Not with dread, not even curiosity. Just patience. Like watching the tide roll in. I knew it would come eventually. That someday she'd have something to say. I just never expected it to come dressed like this. Inside the message was short, measured, almost careful. "I used to think you'd always be there no matter how much space you were given. I thought you were a constant, not a choice. But you were. You are. And I made the wrong one. I'm sorry." There were no paragraphs, no punctuation aside from the final period. It felt less like an apology and more like a woman typing fast between meetings, deleting words she wasn't brave enough to leave in. I didn't write back. That afternoon my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in months. I let it buzz twice before answering. "Hi, Dad." The pause on the other end was longer than expected. Then came the low, grainy timbre of Robert Whitman's voice, older somehow. Or maybe it was always like that and I'd just forgotten the weight it used to carry in a room. "Your mother's been quiet lately," he said. "She's been walking the beach in Santa Barbara every morning. Says she's listening for your voice." I didn't say anything. We saw the video. The speech. The campaign. The consultant job. Still I waited. He cleared his throat. "Your sister. She's seeing someone new. He's older, has a daughter. They're settling down," she says. We were thinking, well, she was thinking maybe you'd like to. Is this the part where you say sorry? Another pause. This one stretched so far I thought the line might have dropped. But it hadn't. "I guess we're not really good at that, huh?" "No," I said. "You're not." More silence. Then his voice again, softer now. "I know we didn't protect you. Not in the way parents should. I can't change that, but I'm here now." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But when trust is starved long enough, even the sound of concern can feel like manipulation. "I'm not angry, Dad. You're not number. I'm just not there anymore." He exhaled like he'd expected something more dramatic. maybe even a scream. But I had no fire left for that, only ashes. And peace. We hung up quietly like old colleagues on their last shift. That night I opened the wedding photo album Bella had uploaded. It was still public, still filled with comments from influencers and business partners praising her beauty, the extravagance, the symbolism. So blessed, so magical. A dream come true. Page after page of curated perfection. Gold-threaded veils. Tablescapes draped in orchids and moonstone. That ridiculous camel making its awkward debut during the reception. And then I saw it. One wide-angle shot of the ceremony taken from the altar's edge looking out toward the guests. I zoomed in. First row, second, third, all the way back. I checked the aisle. Every seat accounted for. There was no empty chair with a name card. No symbolic gesture. No space left open for the sister who raised her, who chose her shoes, who taught her how to braid her hair. She had never expected me to show up. She hadn't even pretended. And for the first time since that day in the hotel room, I smiled. Because there it was. The quiet proof I didn't need an apology to understand. They never saved me a seat. I just stopped begging for one. Outside, the wind picked up, sweeping through the lemon trees by my window. I stepped out onto the balcony, phone still in hand, and looked out over the bay. Naxos shimmered in soft golds and blush like it was wrapped in silk. A few locals waved from the bakery across the alley. A small girl ran by holding her mother's hand, pointing excitedly at something behind me. Maybe a bird. Maybe nothing. I stood there a long time, letting the air undo knots in me I hadn't known were still tight. Later that week, I got a small parcel from New York. No return address. Inside was a photo of me and Bella as kids standing in the kitchen of our childhood home, flour on our cheeks, pizza dough hanging off the counter. On the back, written in shaky cursive, was one sentence. You were always the one who stayed after everyone else got tired. No signature. No explanation. I pinned it to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a dolphin. That night, I set my email signature to a single line. The seat was never empty. I just wasn't there. And it was more than enough. I bought the paper from a little stationery shop tucked between a tailor and a fruit stand, barely wide enough for two people to pass shoulder to shoulder. The woman behind the counter had salt and pepper hair tied back in a clip and offered me 2 fountain pens to try. I picked the one with the slower ink. Back at my apartment, I cleared the small wooden desk by the window. I lit a candle without scent, opened the window just enough to hear the waves brushing the rocks below, and sat down with the paper. Dear Bella. Or maybe not Bella, maybe this is to someone else entirely. Someone who used to wear my sweaters without asking. Someone who remembered exactly how I liked my grilled cheese, burnt edges, extra tomato. Someone who once spent a whole Saturday teaching me a dance routine she never let anyone else see. This isn't a letter you'll receive. That's not the point. It's a note to the version of you I used to know. Or maybe to the version of me that still thought you were coming back. I remember when you called me from the JFK bathroom the day before your Paris presentation. You were 24, knees pulled up on the counter, sobbing because Mom had said you sounded tired. I skipped a meeting and caught a red eye. Held your hair back while you cried. Walked with you through Les Marais the next morning until you could smile again. You never mentioned that trip in your interviews. But I remember. I remember the birthdays you never forgot, not just mine, everybody's. Camels, table brie. You sent cupcakes to my coworker Diane when her cat died and you hated cats. You left notes in our cereal boxes scribbled on sticky pads shaped like stars. Smile. You are someone's entire universe. You wrote it for me once. But I saw the same message in 3 other boxes later. I didn't mind, we all needed it. I remember the time you paused your move to California because Dad had a heart scare. You packed your car 3 times and unpacked it 3 more. You stayed because you believed showing up was what good daughters did. I admired you for that. Even if it meant you stayed for people who forgot your birthday that year. You used to fear silence. You'd fill every pause with a joke, a hum, a question, anything. I think I learned to be quiet just to balance you out. You'd ask if I was mad. I wasn't. I just liked leaving space. I remember when I started shrinking. Not in height, but in volume. At holidays. In planning. In group chats. You took the lead and I let you. You had sparkle. I had steadiness. And we told ourselves that was balance too. But I see now it was erasure. A slow, careful unwriting. I forgave you 100 small things. The borrowed dress you never returned. The way you took credit for my dessert recipe at Thanksgiving. Even that time you joked about my budget lifestyle in front of your clients. I let them go. I let so much go I thought maybe I was the problem. But then came the wedding. And suddenly I wasn't on the list. I wasn't part of the story. Not even a name card in the back row. That's when I stopped writing the script you expected me to follow. That's when I found my own pen. I paused. The ink had pooled slightly at the corner of the paper the way tears do when you blink too slowly. I folded the letter in thirds, then unfolded it. I read it again. Not aloud. Just slowly to myself. It wasn't rage that filled me. Not grief either. Just recognition. I walked barefoot down the narrow street to the rocky edge where the ocean met the cove. The air had cooled and a few stars blinked between the moving clouds. The letter was warm in my hand, edges curled from the breeze. There was no one around. Just the tide steady and unbothered and the faint sound of a fisherman's radio playing something old and soft in the distance. I didn't bring matches. I didn't need ceremony. I lit the paper with the end of the candle I'd carried down in a mason jar. The flame licked the corner slowly, almost hesitant. Then it took curling the page into bright orange edges and gray ash. I held it until I couldn't, then let the rest drift into the wind. It scattered like petals. The sky didn't change. The water didn't cheer. But inside me something exhaled. I sat on the low wall facing the sea, pulling my knees up to my chest. I watched the last of the ash dissolve, carried off into the dark. Then I whispered into the wind, not loud, not desperate. Disappearing makes a sound too. You just have to know how to listen. I stayed until the candle burned low and the stars pulled their quiet net across the bay. Then I stood up, shook the wax off my fingers, and walked home. Not to forget, but to continue. And in continuing, I chose something I never knew I could before. I chose not to be needed. The morning after the letter burned away, the air smelled like salt and clean stone. I walked down to the cove before the fishermen had finished loading their nets and sat on the bench that curved toward the sea. A couple passed by slowly, their steps deliberate and careful on the uneven path. They wore matching sun hats and shared a coffee in a paper cup. The woman smiled at me and paused. You live around here. Her voice was kind, curious, the way people ask when they want to believe you're part of something gentle. I smiled back. Almost do now. She nodded like that answer made sense to her. They continued walking, and I stayed where I was, watching the waves soften the rocks below. I had no reason to be anywhere else. That night I cooked dinner for myself with no occasion to celebrate. Just roasted vegetables, warm bread, and one glass of wine. I played music that didn't ask anything of me. No lyrics, just sounds that knew how to stay in the background. Then I turned off the lights and sat on the small terrace as the stars began to claim the sky. My phone buzzed once. Bella. Her name alone no longer sent a shock through me. Just a quiet kind of notice, like rain brushing against a window. I didn't open the message right away. I let it sit there while I watched the moon rise like a paper lantern in slow motion. Eventually, I read it. I'm getting married again. If you don't come, I'll understand. That was all. No explanation. No apology. No invitation, really. Just a single sentence folded like a truce inside a text bubble. I looked at the screen for a moment longer, then locked it. I placed the phone face down beside my empty glass and let the silence return. I didn't feel anger, not relief either. Just stillness. The kind that doesn't need to be named or shared. I lifted the glass again, catching the reflection of stars on its rim. I wasn't toasting to anything in particular. Just the fact that I had made it through, that I was here. Whole. Quiet. Alive. I think I finally came home to myself, not to a house or a city or a family name, but to a rhythm that belonged only to me. To mornings without panic. Today's not shaped by someone else's expectations. To evenings like this one where peace wasn't borrowed, it was mine. The emails from Bella stopped after that. No follow-up. No photos of the wedding. No news through mutual friends. It didn't feel like a missing piece anymore. Just something I had once carried and set down. The studio in Naxos turned into a real home. I painted one wall a soft olive green and bought a secondhand bookshelf from a neighbor who taught yoga in the mornings. I grew basil in a pot out front and learned how to make perfect hummus without measuring anything. A few of my essays started gaining attention online. Not viral, not loud, but honest. And readers wrote back. One of them, a woman in Vermont, told me she played my words aloud to her sister after 10 years of silence. She didn't say if they spoke again, but she said they cried together. That was enough. Sometimes I passed by the old photo stores, the ones where tourists printed beach pictures on canvas. One of them had a family portrait in the window. Parents in linen, kids matching. The oldest daughter stood slightly apart like she was added in last minute. She smiled, but her eyes looked somewhere else. I wondered if she had also been erased at one point. Or if she was the one doing the erasing. I didn't write her story. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked further down the coast that evening, past the restaurants and the little shops that sold hand-woven bags and olive oil soap. I sat near the edge of the rocks where the lights didn't reach and the sea was just sound, waves pulling and releasing. Over and over. A breeze lifted a strand of hair off my face. I closed my eyes. To anyone out there listening, maybe you've been written out of someone else's story. Maybe your name was left off the list, your chair never pulled out, your presence never welcomed. I know what that feels like. To wonder if you ever belonged. To hold your breath in rooms you paid to decorate. To show up only to be made invisible. But I promise you this, you are not unseen, you are not without weight. Even silence leaves footprints. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story reminded you of your own or someone you love, tell me. I want to hear it. Because sometimes just saying it aloud is how we begin again.